Hi, friends. Welcome to Law Chat with Girija. My name is Girija Bhargav Patel. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I am a podcaster. I am an educator. I am a businesswoman. I am an entrepreneur, and I'm a lawyer. I truly believe in the power of mentorship through storytelling, and that's what Law Chat is all about. So whether you are in 6 months or 10 years of business experience, we can all learn from each other's experiences because we face the same challenges and we have the victories and we have mistakes that we're all making. So why not lean into them and know that we're going to be fine and we're going to be okay and we're going to be inspired. And of course, this is Law Chat with Girija, so we will be talking about some law at some point during the conversation. And if you love what you hear today, which I know you will, then subscribe to Law Chat with Girija and share the love. So grab your coffee, sparkling water, or wine, and let's dive in to the next inspiring mentorship session. Hi, friends. Welcome to Law Chat. Do you look back at your past photographs, whether it's a brand shoot or family photographs, and you wonder how awkward those moments were, or you're just cringing, just remembering those moments, and just leaves you feeling a little bit yucky or a little bit uncomfortable? I know that feeling, and I know it's common also because I've definitely been there, done that. My guest today, Allie Siarto, owner of Allie & Co. Photography, a wedding and lifestyle photography company based out of Michigan. She's a photographer who promises that you will walk away smiling and remembering those moments with laughter rather than the yuck feeling. And I just love that. And she's been leader in her industry. She has a successful photography business since 2010. And she's been published in major publications like The Knot and also Style Me Pretty, as well as she's written business publications for the Huffington Post, Washington Post, and even Forbes. I mean, amazing. I cannot wait to talk to you and get some business advice and then also just learn more about your journey. Welcome, Allie, to Launch.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's always fun to tell stories and just connect and talk about creativity.
I know. And there's so much to learn. I just feel like we were just talking earlier and how there's so many different facets to every single business owner. And it's not just what you see all the time. There's so many other different layers like an onion, and you just have to keep on peeling it and,
Yes.
really discovering, even as an entrepreneur, you're discovering yourself, and then you can give that to somebody else as well. So I know you're in photography, but how did you get there? What was the journey like?
It was not a direct path. Like a lot of photographers, I think I went to Michigan State University and I studied advertising and digital media. And I thought that even though my dad ran his own business and I saw entrepreneurship in my life, I was taught from a young age that you graduate college and you get a job and you work your way up that job. Or maybe it was just because I was wanting to go into advertising. I thought that was how it was going to work. And even my husband, who wanted to start his own company after college, went to his advisor, like his master's advisor, his master's degree, and said, I'm going to start this company. And he was like, why would you do that? That's not the career path that he told him he's going to fail. So I was like, oh no. So I didn't think that was an option, at least until I was well into my career. So I started out working for PR agencies, working in market research, and actually started a company doing that in my early 20s, which I kind of stumbled into, where a friend was like, out for drinks with a friend in Chicago, living in Chicago at the time. And she was like, hey, I actually I hear you talking about this stuff that you want to do. I have a client for you. And it was a global client, enough that I could quit my job and get into this. And it still freaked me out. The idea of running my own business was just terrifying. My sister would always tell me, you're never going to be poor because you won't take risks. You're going to work really hard, but you're never going to be rich because you won't take risks. I was not a risk taker. So photography was great because I could get into it little by little until I was at that point where I could jump in full time. And so I, as a PR professional, was just taking photography classes in the evenings just to branch outside of my little bubble. And there was a nonprofit called the Chicago Photography Center. And I just took every class, loved it. It was taught by local professionals, worked my way through that, started volunteering there and teaching and connecting, called up a photographer. And I was like, hey, can I can I assist you at weddings? The classic, like, let me come. I was his third shooter assistant, help him out with everything. And he taught me so much, forever grateful for everything that I learned from him. But I was still running my market research company and actually got it to a point where we had an offer to sell that company and we were about to sell that company. And at that point, I was going to have to walk away from photography in order to sell the company, take a job with the new company, like have a director position with them and just kind of like be tied to what they wanted me to do. And it was a company out of state. I was going to be traveling all the time. And so we went to a young entrepreneur conference and with my husband and I actually, like, he joined my company when we started the market research company. So we're at this conference, we have the paperwork ready to sign. I was like, let's just sign it, get it out the door. We can celebrate this weekend at this conference. There's going to be like this martini night, whatever, drinks out, let's have fun. And he's like, let's just wait till Monday. He didn't want to sell. He just didn't tell me at the time. Uh-huh. So over the course of the weekend, this has been like a 6-month process. And I'm thinking we're going to have our picture and press releases in our 20s, selling a company. We're going to get hundreds of thousands of dollars. It wasn't like a multi-million deal by any means, but it was like a lot of money. And it was like pretty, to me, it was outward success. Like, if you were to ask me deep down at the time, did I really want to go work for that company and have them call me up and be like, get on a plane, you've got to come do this thing. Like, I liked what we were doing, but I was going to lose my sense of freedom. Mm-hmm. So if you ask me, do you really want that? Like, I probably deep down would have said, not really, but like, look at their dollar signs they're offering me. Let's do it. So that weekend at the conference, we connected with another young business owner, and just in talking to him, he was like, I can tell you're not actually interested in selling your company and working for someone else. Right. And we were like, you're right, actually. And so it was very hard because they put a lot of resources into this, a lot of planning into this. And like, we really let them down by not selling. That was like not a great move. Like, we should have done that earlier, not highly recommended to wait that long. And I still feel bad about how the timing worked out. But in the end, it was the best thing for us not to sell. So we walked away from the dollar signs and we walked toward the lifestyle that we wanted. Mm. And in the end, I never, ever regretted any of it. So like, I remember sitting, looking at my hotel bed, like packing my suitcase that next day afterward. And I was like, the decision that we make this weekend will change our entire lives. It will change who our children are. Like, when we have children, everything. And I still look at my kids and I'm like, would it be you if I had like not walked away that day? So it all worked out really well in the end, but hard decision. So then over the course of the next few years, with that freedom, kind of running both businesses, we were able to move to DC for a year. We kind of called it like our study abroad year, just like a temporary adventure before having kids, and then had our daughter and moved back to Michigan. And within that next year, really, I transitioned into photography as my full-time business. Mm-hmm. And I loved it because I used to work on retainer. And so with age PR agencies, you get calls when you get calls. Like, it could be the evening, it could be the weekend. If there's an issue, a crisis, a corporate crisis, reputation management kind of thing, we had to jump in and like look at perceptions, because we were looking at like social media trends. What were the perceptions about the company, monitoring social media? And it would just be like, get up and go. And so it was nice to make that transition actually away from the retainer work and just take on the projects that I wanted to take on. And so now if I'm like, I'm looking at my calendar, I booked my like fall season, super crazy. But then I made sure that the next month I only took on a few projects so that I could really re-energize myself, spend some time on personal projects and things like that. So I can balance out the financial side with the need for myself to have a break. So basically, I built that slowly over the years. And I was at that point, it just happened at that point when I had my daughter, I was ready to like switch over. And that's what I really wanted to do. So, I've been doing photography full time since about 2014. And in the process of that, I did start teaching a class at Michigan State University in the advertising department. So that's just kind of been like a fun little side thing that I've done, because I guess I still hoard the jobs a little bit. Like, what else can I do for fun? But it's all pretty gratifying. So
what else can I do? I love that. Gosh, packed with so much wisdom that you don't even know you just shared. So number one, I feel like colleges are not designed to, at least even like 5 years ago, they were not equipped to teach students how to be entrepreneurs. They were equipped how to be workers. That's all. Like that's what colleges teach you to be workers, worker. And I think it's such a great lesson that your husband was told that he can't do it. And he's like, no, I will do it. Watch me. And so, I mean, it's kind of like when inside, don't let people tell you can't do it because they don't even know what that feeling is like. How can you get advice from someone who has zero idea of what that feeling might be like?
That's true. And I will credit where it's due. I'll say, at least at Michigan State, it's gotten a lot better. They've built out some like entrepreneur, like groups, clubs, classes. They've brought in business owners to teach. So they're doing a lot more than they used to, but it probably depends on the specific interactions that students have, the instructors they have, the advisors they have. And yes, traditionally college has been a place to be taught to go into the job force, and you weren't traditionally taught how to go off and start your own business.
Yeah. And entrepreneurship it's been forever there. Like it's an industry. It's always been a concept, but I agree with you. Like just more recently, schools have started making that a thing. Like now it is a actual degree. Even the school that my children go to, it's actually a diploma you can graduate with in high school. It's like so cool.
That's neat. Yeah.
It's really neat because you're empowering others to be able to do something. Like even in law school, we were never taught how to start your own law practice when the majority of lawyers have their own law practice. Like how can that be a situation?
Yeah. And the basic stuff, like the bookkeeping, like client marketing.
The basics of that's what you're scrambling and trying to figure out. And you lose your sleep at night trying to figure that out, and not what you're really good at. Which is like
absolutely
lawyering in my situation, right? And so I think it's so cool that you did that. Now, do you still have your marketing company, or is that?
So no, we ended up actually shutting it down. Well, it's kind of all complicated. Yeah, we shut it down, but there was we had like multiple acquisition offers and merger offers over the years, because we kind of kept it going for a few years. But then I really did burn out from it. And basically there was like a partner that wanted to merge. And I ended up saying like, I'm just so burnt out by this business. I don't even care about the money anymore. I want to walk away. And so part of it was I had gone through, I always talk about Molly Mahar runs a company called Stratejoy. And she does this thing called Holiday Council, where like, it's kind of goal planning around the holidays every year, where you're looking at the next year. Oh no, I lied. It was actually something at the time called like Joy Juice. Anyway, she has all these different things, just journaling and reflection. Yeah. And it just happened that I did this writing prompt right before I had my first daughter that was like, imagine you have a daughter and you have to describe to her, what does success look like to you? And it makes you really think like, the outward success that looks like success, which is like usually money and success and maybe fame, or not success, money and fame and glory and whatever. And I was like, but what is it really to me? It's not that. It's like having enough to be comfortable, of course, but also having freedom. For me, it's freedom to be creative in the way I want to be creative. It's freedom to choose my schedule. And so I don't care at the end of the day. Like, obviously I care about money. I take on projects that I like, probably not that I like all of them, but when I should say no, but I'm too busy. But I really would now at this point in my life where I much more value the freedom and success. Yeah. So in writing that journal prompt, I was like, this looks like success and financially it looks like success, but like, am I loving what I'm doing? Am I excited to get up every day? Not so much. Mm-hmm. So I was actually in the end, didn't feel bad walking away from that situation.
Yeah. I hate to interrupt this awesome conversation, but I have to stop and talk with you about the number one thing I'm asked about by entrepreneurs: contracts. They're vital to any business relationship and to protect your business. But I also know that entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting up, money is tight. But I would never want you to compromise on a strong legal foundation. So enter yourcontractbuddy.com, a website created by me with contract templates created and drafted by me and fellow industry partners. They're ready to use and easy to plug in immediately. And they are not restricted to any specific state. YourContractBuddy.com is sponsoring this episode, and you and your listener can get 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. Yes, you heard me right. 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. And now back to our awesome conversation. It's so nice that you actually brought that up because I have lately been talking a lot about alignment and values. And if we are walking in alignment with our value system, and it's literally, it runs through every aspect of our life. It's not that you can live on different islands and have different values for each island. And if you are aligned, you walk away with so much peace and you're
Yes.
moving forward with a lot more composure and a peace of mind, and then also knowing that a resolute, right? Like, I know I'm doing this is okay, like what I'm doing is fine. And I feel like, of course, I mean, anyone can hear that one of your values is freedom of choice, freedom to be moving the way you want to move and not being told what to do. And a lot of times in acquisitions, the people who are running the smaller company that's being bought out has to be absorbed into the bigger company because they want that person there. And it's generally
Right.
forever too, by the way. FYI, people only want to hear for a little time just so
That it moved over. Yeah.
yeah, like everything is just smoothly running running the way it's supposed to run. And then after a couple of years, you might not be there anymore. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
those are things to be aware of. But I love that you chose what was true to you rather than chasing after the money, but you chose lifestyle. And I love that you actually said that.
Yeah. And I'll say kind of a side like advice on this. I again remember go back, I'm not a big risk taker. And so saying no to the money was only possible because we were debt free. Like, and I will say, like, it's that, what's that saying? Don't claim to hit a home run if you started on like second or third base. Like, I definitely had help. I didn't come out of college with college loans. So, like, full disclosure, that made a big difference in my ability to take risk as a non-risk taker. But being responsible with money, like, we were always very careful to save and have an emergency fund and know that even if, and it wasn't even that we took a hit, like I knew I was going to have the money there because I had the bookings there.
Mhm.
But I think it really helps to make that leap if you've been on a budget and responsible and saved and paid down debt. Like, it certainly doesn't hurt the
Yeah.
situation to make those decisions.
That's such a valid point because you obviously like you had that financial security with you. And sometimes that's not the situation, but then your decision
Right.
obviously impacted with your current environment and where you are at the time. And sometimes you might be such a big risk taker that you're going to be like, no, I'm still going to go for the lifestyle and not for the money. And I'm going to make this.
Yeah.
And that's okay too, because at the end of the day, it's what works for you in the environment that you're in. And again, with the value systems that are close to your heart.
Yeah, whatever situation you're in financially, I do think, like knowing what you spend in your business, knowing what you spend in your life can be a big help because then you can say, how much do I actually need to book to make this work? How much do I want to have as my runway that I can save before I make this leap? So I've been really into lately the podcast and the book Choose FI, which is like Choose Financial Independence, which again is just kind of about freedom of time by making smart financial decisions. So little shout out to them if anyone's interested in that resource for like financial inspiration.
What was the name of the book?
Choose FI. So it's Choose Financial Independence. It's like, I don't know if you know about the whole FIRE movement. It's sort of like, it can get really extreme because it's about for some people, it's about retiring early and just going all in crazy.
Yeah.
But for me, it was more about like putting myself in a situation where I felt like I could do what I want with my time and like take on the business that I want and the work that I want and feel secure in that decision. So it's just about like being smart with money mostly at the end of the day.
Okay, I love that. We'll put that in the show notes. I like to really talk about the mindsets and also the difficult decisions that we need to make. And I know that one of those difficult decisions, like you said, was to last minute say, we can't move forward with this acquisition. And when that happened, I know that was not an easy decision. And a lot of times people feel very cornered and they feel like pressured to move forward because, oh, they've done so much. Oh, they've done this. So, how did you find the strength to say no?
It was, I mean, it was awful really, because I really felt like I let down a friend because the friend who connected us originally to that company and got us that first project. Then we were working with this agency. She was like then working at that company. And I felt like I directly let her down. And I still feel bad about that, even though I still feel 100% like we made the right decision. And so I think it's just like in that case, I had Jeff, my husband, we were there together, and we met this other friend who was kind of like a great, like pure mentor to bounce ideas off of. And so you just have to have someone to talk to. You can't make these decisions in a vacuum. You can't make them alone. You have to have some trusted friends or, loved ones, family, whoever it is to you. You have to be able to talk about these things and run these ideas around before you can make those big business decisions. The right people, obviously. You don't want the detractors, right?
Totally on point. Great advice. Have the right circle around you. And not that they have to agree with you, but people whose advice is solid and genuine and not coming from a place that could be distracting. So
yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, completely. So when you started your photography business, was it just very organic and the transition just happened very smoothly? Or was it something that you're like, oh man, like we are having growing pains?
It definitely started more organically. And then I think it blew up more once I like gave it more time. So when I first started, it was very, I wouldn't say accidental because I wanted it to happen, but very early, I was taking those classes and I was printing out my prints because I was part of class and I was putting them up in my cubicle. And I worked at this big PR agency. And so like people would come by and be like, oh, those are pretty. Like, do you take family photos? And I was like, okay, like, sure. So that's how I originally started actually photographing people. And then once I liked it, I kind of got more intentional. And actually with weddings, the intentionality was reaching out and working for someone else as a mentor, as an assistant. And then B, once I felt confident enough to like actually launch my own business, launch my own website, I did make the investment originally to pay for advertising. So at the time it was it was much more effective, honestly, then than it is now to pay for that particular advertising, but it still works. So putting money behind my mission of what I wanted to do to actually like boost it quickly. And once I was paying for advertising and getting in front of more people, I really started to book. It might be a little different now because social media was not quite the same as what it is now in terms of the opportunities. Like now I don't pay for advertising at all. I find everybody finds me organically, but if you're trying to like kind of get there faster, it's not a bad idea to pay for some form of advertising to get yourself in front of your audience more quickly.
I think that's such a great advice because with the algorithms that, especially with certain platforms, they just keep changing every day. And, one day they're like your best friend. The other day you're just like, what just happened? And then of course, again, there was, like Facebook and all shut down for like,
right. Yes.
I don't know how many hours, like it was such a big deal. And, well, if you are solely dependent on these platforms for your marketing, for conversion, that's a problem. You need to absolutely have a diversification in your marketing. And paid marketing is really great. I think it really helps boost the exposure that you would normally not get. You just have to be like, now that is also an art. Like that is also, there's some science to it. And there's people who do that, just do that. And, getting the right parameters and whatever you're trying to put out there. So just be thoughtful about all of that, I guess.
Yeah, but definitely. And for me, like, I'm on Instagram and I do definitely get inquiries directly through Instagram. And it's kind of its own standalone island because people on Instagram don't tend to click through to my website. That's just how it is. Like they'll DM me. And so now I just encourage them to do that. And I just have to share the details there. But, Instagram for me, while it can be very powerful, and for some, that's like the core of their creative business, I keep up on it enough to like bring in the leads and have a presence there and have a portfolio. But if you look at where my bookings come from, way more of them come through referrals. If you're early on, like Google, just Pinterest, pinning everything that I put on Google or put on my blog, using the right language on my blog, using the right language in those pins. Those are search engines on Pinterest. Like people are looking. And so I get a lot more referrals or a lot more business from Google and Pinterest than I do from Instagram. And those are more evergreen. I don't have to post every day to keep the business coming in there. And so it's just less work. So I like to use those two to diversify.
That. Do you do it on your own or do you have a team that's helping you do that?
I do it on my own. I definitely batch content. Like if you look at my blog right now, I haven't posted in quite a while because those old blog posts that I wrote that are like still relevant to what I'm looking for people to find me, they're still finding me through those old blog posts. Those old pins that are I see on my watch, my Apple Watch will pop up like every day, multiple times, like this session was just pinned, tagged for this location and this inspiration. And so I can kind of set it and forget it and just like post in the off season when I'm less busy. And then it's there as evergreen content. When it comes to something like Instagram or Facebook, a little bit more like ongoing, I use Planoly, and I just drag all my images. We were talking before about branding images. So I like have images of myself, I have images of my work, and I drag them into Planoly so I can see how they look. And I can just and actually talking about storytelling, one tip that I learned that I use is instead of just being like, here's a picture, like I try to tell a story in every single post as much as I can. I can't always do it, but I try to kind of have like a story bank, which I will have to give credit where it's due. I'll have to find you the person who called it the story bank. But I try to like tell like the Kendra Hall, actually have the book in front of me, Stories That Stick is one book that I recommend, which is, she recommends kind of the idea of with every story you tell, you have your normal, which is like, what was it like before, your explosion, what changed, and then your new normal, what did it look like after? And so I try to kind of put those stories into what I share on social media with Instagram, et cetera, where I can relate more to people instead of just selling them every single time. So that's a hot little tip that I learned.
I'm just so floored because you have such amazing marketing tips coming out of here right now. I'm just like, okay, I'm going to listen to this and absolutely start implementing these things.
Definitely check this book. This is a relatively new book. I think it came out maybe in 2020. And Kendra Hall, Stories That Stick it's just been such a great book. So that's for any business owner. I know Story Brand is really popular, but this is so much better.
Okay.
Sorry, Story Brand. This is better.
I've had a few guests who just do Story Brand. I mean, they're like Story Brand experts, but which is wonderful.
It's still good.
The idea is to share a story, even in law. When we go into court and we're presenting a case, we're telling a story. We start with a story, we end with a story, and in between we give all the facts that we believe to be true as to make sure our story is true. And so it's the art of storytelling. And I'm still working on it on my end too, like in my business, because even though in court, I could possibly do it a lot better than I do in my business, I think.
Well, you're doing storytelling right here, right? You're telling people stories.
I am, but it's just, it's like, and this is great because right now I feel like I'm getting this aha moment. And it's like,
that's good.
Same thing. It's just translating it into now adopting it into this business and how I'm doing it. And even in your emails and things like that, you're right, like the hook and all that stuff that you need in there. But if it's just coming from the heart and putting it out there, I think it's just, people get gripped. They're like in it. They're like, okay, what's next? What's the next chapter? It's like,
And one thing, I was just talking with my husband about this, like in the content you create, kind of that like 90% giving, 10% asking. And again, that has credit to someone. I didn't make that up. Sorry, again, I don't have a source, but the idea being like you're either teaching or entertaining, like building that know, like, and trust factor in 90% of the content you create. And then in 10%, you can actually be like, okay, now like come back to me. So one thing I notice is like, if you use the word you in your post, it's probably selling. It's not always, sometimes it's a story, but if you're using the word you're like focused on the customer and you're like, you come to me. But if you use like specific character, like yourself or a specific client or a person, then it's probably more likely. It's like, it's kind of your check. Like, is this a story or am I just selling to you? So it's in general kind of how you can check yourself. Like, do I have a character and it's probably you if you're the business owner or your client. So
yeah. That's a great tip. That's also, and it really helps because sometimes not everybody's built to be a salesperson. I'm not. And so it's tough. Yeah. It's really tough. And I hate even walking the fine line of feeling like, sleazy marketing or whatever. And so I'm always like so far away from it. At least I think I am, because I'm just like, I just don't even want to be near that. I don't know what that means. I don't like it. I myself don't like it.
Yeah. But if you spend the time like educating and like you're doing right now, educating and building trust, then when it is time to ask for that thing, and like when I do then open up my booking calendar or say, hey, I have availability for branding sessions, then, or it's like, okay, obviously I'm selling this, like get to know me and you can just click this link and learn more. Like you don't have to, I mean, you do want to have like, I guess you want to have a goal for every post and maybe a call to action here and there, but it just doesn't, you don't always have to sell.
Yeah, exactly. You don't always have to sell. You can just kind of talk about you and or what you do and how you do it and client victories, which I need to do more of that. So let's talk a little bit more about your branding. I know that within your business, you were doing, wedding and lifestyle shoots, and now you've started kind of expanding into branding shoots as well. How did that come about? And how do you do that? And like, what are some of your ways of getting that brand out in the forefront?
So how I got into branding photography was actually just, I think there was like probably a Facebook ad for a course on personal branding photography. And I was like, cool, this sounds interesting. And I actually remember like, it was like $1,000. And I was like, okay, let's see how this goes. This could be a risk. I don't, you're putting down $1,000, you want to get return on your investment. And in that course, one of the biggest things that came out of it for me was just the opportunity that people are even interested in this kind of thing. And then B, what was called a story session questionnaire. The story session questionnaire was like everything for me because it gave me the questions to send to my clients to ask them to help design the session. And they get so excited about the story session questionnaire that most of them, when they reach out to me, they're like, send it to me now. And I'm like, we have to sign a contract first, but okay. Like they really want that guidance on, discovering who's your ideal client and what are your color schemes and what's your vibe. Like they want that guidance. They don't want to just come, they don't want to do all of it. They can do some of it, obviously. Like I use Style and Select, which is a tool for them to take a little quick quiz on like gender, size, and general style and colors. And they'll get ideas for outfits that they can buy or like ideas of things that they already have. But
that's awesome.
Just as much as we can guide them so that we're,
so we much work. It's so much work for a branding shoot.
Yeah. So as much as like we can be that, it's not just about like clicking the camera. It's about like, you're the creative director. You're designing this whole thing for them with collaboration. Like you obviously need to get information from them. And so having that really differentiated myself. And then actually, funny enough, going back, I had somebody come to me for a wedding, probably, a couple of years ago now. And she was like, I actually found you because we were looking for branding photography for a company, but I saw you didn't do that. So you weren't the right fit for that. So I hired you for the wedding. So I still like your wedding work. But if you don't show it and like feature it, it's not, people aren't going to hire you for it. And so now it's very prominent. And I'm actually, when I have time over the winter, going to even make the branding the most dominant part of what I market. And so people now just using those keywords, using those marketing things, focusing on showing off your work as much as possible and telling the client stories of like, what was the problem that they had when they came to you? What were they looking for? How did you offer the solution? And then what did they have after the fact? Or, what did that look like? Showing off that work. And I just couldn't believe in the last year how many people came to me and they would say, I live an hour and a half away from you, but I can't find anybody in my area who specifically does this. So like, they don't want to hire a wedding photographer to do their branding work. They want to hire someone who specializes in that. And the fact that I have a process and a questionnaire and design, like they know that I'm going to walk them through that process. And so that's been really helpful. And I'm booking do branding sessions, multiple a week now. So it's been a good time.
I think it's so important also, like we were talking before we got on, that how branding sessions are so important because it really speaks about your brand. Those images are so curated for your brand. It's not a fake image. It's not disingenuous to your company or to what you do, but it just really puts so much intentionality behind the photograph, behind the story that you're about to tell, or behind whatever you have set up for the future. Whether you're doing a launch or whatever. And I personally love my branding photographer, like my photographer, I love her. And, but I also love my photographs because now I don't want to use any other photograph, but my branding photographs. Bothers me.
And you can design them to be, your colors, your background. You can make, like, everything you use is going to look good. It's the new trend that I'm seeing, that I said to you before, it might not be a trend. It's just that I'm seeing it now, is that people who use stock images for years on their website and social media are realizing, oh, I don't want to use stock images. I want those people to be us. I want, as a team, I want to be able to pull from a pool of images, and I want them to be us in our office. I want our customers to see our people at work in our office with our colors. And it's just very powerful. And so I really think there's a ton of opportunity in that space in the coming years.
Yeah. And I don't think it's a trend. I think it's a shift in perspective.
Yeah, that's the right word. You're right.
Yeah, because
it's growing.
It's growing.
Exactly.
People are really realizing how important branding photography is. And honestly, it's like, I take pride in it. I take pride to show that this is what I love. These are the things that I really enjoy. This is the stuff that really represents me. I can use my notebooks that I'm obsessed with, because then I can really talk about it, with like a proper story that's authentic, and that you feel the energy of authenticity in that post also, or whatever I'm doing. And so I love the branding photography concept. I think not a lot of people do it, but now a lot of people are doing it. They're realizing, I mean, even when I post my photographs, everybody's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Who is this person? Who did this? Who did that?
Yeah. They connect with you more when you show yourself too.
Yeah.
And the other opportunity that I've noticed that I'll throw in there is, this is along the same lines, headshots. Now I'm still doing some headshots that are just kind of classic team headshots on the same background, but I've also noticed that there's a shift where a lot of people want their headshots to be more approachable, personal. So they're not just looking for a gray backdrop and a classic, like everyone else headshot. They want their headshot to have like plants behind them, or something like their own space behind them, just a little, even though it's just little cropped in headshot, they want it to be lighter, brighter, personal. So that's another thing that I'm really moving toward in my marketing, is that headshots don't have to just be the same old headshots anymore. They can be different.
Yes, absolutely. It's like the school pictures that we took with that gray marble, blue marble background.
Yes. Exactly. And everywhere, it's just, you don't stand out with it. People want to differentiate themselves, and they can differentiate themselves with that little tiny bit of something behind them.
And then having multiple types of headshots for different types of situations. So I'm, I have those headshots where the background is literally a garden or something. So very representative of me, but not necessarily like super formal. And I don't want formal either. I can do a formal, but still have a beautiful background. And so I have those, but then again, I use some of them for specific things. And other times I use one for a different type of situation or, presentation or whatever I'm doing, kind of taking into account the audience that I will be surrounding myself with.
Yeah, that's why like my mini branding sessions are so popular. You just get like 10 little, basically headshots, maybe some are a little bit more variety, but where now I'm shifting it to where like, I'm just going to control it. You come in for 30 minutes, I'll just take some different photos. But yeah, just having absolutely, I agree, some variety where you can match it to your audience, because you might have some different, you might be featured in a magazine or on this website or in this place. So you might want it to be different.
So tell me, what are some tips that you can give to the listeners about getting ready for a brand shoot? And not just like, oh, get your clothes and makeup done, but more like really sitting down and thinking about your brand and how to reflect that in the images.
Yeah, well, I think it's really nice. Like for me, for my brand, I have a mood board. And if you go on Canva and look up mood board, you can find a bunch of templates. So the number one, I don't know if this is number one, but a place I would start is, if you don't have brand colors, you need to establish your brand colors, because everything's going to go off of that. And so you can use sites like Coolers. I think it's Cooler. There are a bunch of different resources to help you build out a palette. I think there's literally one called Palette. Where you can go on this site and you can like pick, if you really want to dig into like the psychology. Okay, I'm going to go on like a semi-tiny tangent because I teach some of this in my PR class. So there are I think there's like 13 or 14 brand archetypes, and you can look this up, where the brand archetype I am is the sage. And so like there's others like the jester, the lover, the innocent. I'm not the jester like a lot of photographers. I'm not like party time. I'm the sage. I'm calming. I am guiding. I'm giving you just a ton of information to make you prepared. I'm the wise, the wise one. And so in the sage, there's color. Now I know my vibe that I want to put out there. So I know that's going to drive everything, my colors, my branding, photography, everything that goes in. And so I can go on and say like, let's say like a nice sage green or a green calming nature color is going to be my core. And I can go on a site like Cooler and put that in, and it will give me a whole palette. You can choose some different things to use. So I'm kind of in the, like, my wall that I've put in my office has like brown, white, black, blush, some natural, like those are all kind of colors that I use. And then I'm using the sage and the color scheme to drive. If I go to do photos for myself now, I know that I'm not going to be in front of a bright pink wall. I'm going to be in front of things that are like within my color scheme. I'm going to be wearing things within my color scheme. My makeup's not going to be like crazy colors. It's going to be in my color scheme. And so with all of that, I think knowing your brand archetype for yourself and your color scheme can really help you as a starting point for driving everything. So if you know those things, you can decide on your location, your props, your, all your backgrounds, all those little things that go into the design.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's such great advice. I mean, I also have purple because
I like it.
Goes with my brand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
I recently, and not to say that, so with me, like there's times when I want to wear that super pop of color, which is wonderful. Take that picture in that pop of color. And then when you're feeling it, show it, because that's part of who you are as well. But you're right. Like and now it's just like part of the DNA of preparing and present and, coming up for presentations. Also, I'm constantly thinking about coming in front of others. And so you're right. Makeup, even like the clothes, the colors, the style, everything. It just needs to resonate with me and speak about my brand and who I am also. Like a small thing, like even on stories, I just cannot in my right mind do filters that totally change this, because I'm like, that's crazy talk. Like I don't even want to do filters that change the color of my skin. Right. Because I'm just like, that's, unless it's like a filter that's clearly like a fall thing or whatever,
Yeah.
But I'm like, no, that's not me. And maybe it's just me who was like so psycho about that, but
no, I get it. That's not your brand to do that. Like in the same way that like pointing and dancing for like reels is probably not going to be my brand ever, which it totally is for other people. And it works. If you're like the jester, the everyman, again, you have to read into all these archetypes, but like I can tell you, because I know my archetype that I fit, that it's okay that I'm not dancing. So it helps you if you kind of like are like, oh, I fit in this archetype. My brand fits in this archetype, which probably is you if it's your own business. Then you're not going to feel bad seeing someone else doing something. You're like, that's cool, but it doesn't fit my brand. I don't have to do that. I don't have to be everything to everybody.
So where can we find the archetypes again? Do you have like a link, or you can?
I can send it to you. You can put it in the show notes. Yeah.
It's so fascinating. I love stuff like that. This has been so much learning right now. And I love how you've taken your marketing and PR experience and really applying it into your business. So your clients are not just getting photographs, they're getting very intentional photographs that they can use for their business, for their branding and their marketing that they're doing. And I just love that.
Yeah, it's all about the planning. Yeah, planning ahead, getting them inspired. So it's been a lot of fun on the brand.
So tell me, this is Law Chat. So we do like to talk a little bit about the law as much as we can. But has there ever been a time that you have used the law in a way in your business that you're just like, gosh, thank God I had that? Or you're like, oh man, I wish I had that?
Well, with COVID, it was really important because, I have contracts, of course, within my business, and we had a lot of people in weddings, especially, who had to move their weddings. And so within my contract, I had like kind of an act of God contract, like if there's a tornado, like it kind of fit. So it kind of just came down to like, I had to be a little flexible on figuring that out. But of course I changed my contract after that. And so I said, you could tell me, I probably didn't have to like write out, I put a what's it called? A force,
Force
you know the word.
majeure. Yeah.
Yes, that. But I also put a specific COVID clause that says things like, if you're symptomatic, you have to tell me before we have to move our session, which people have had to do with sessions, or luckily it hasn't happened, knock on wood, with weddings. But I did have one last year, and I put in my contract, I will not shoot an event that is not within the guidelines of the like safety guidelines that the government puts out there, because I was really nervous. I was like, I'm very good at anxiety. I was super nervous. And so that did what I had them, anyone whose event I had not photographed yet, I had them sign an addendum that said, this is what I'm following. I just want to make sure it's very, very clear from the get-go that this is what's happening. And I did have at least one event where they called me a couple weeks before and they're like, look, we know we're going to be above the legal limit. Just want you to know, how do you feel? And I was like, this is my out. Like, I'm just not coming. Sorry. So, I mean, I helped them find another photographer, and I absolutely could have done it. I just, for my low risk tolerance, as you know, I didn't feel it. So I didn't go. And it was like in the cold weather, and I knew we'd be kind of inside. So yeah, that's been the big one with COVID, and just like protecting myself, feeling safe with that. And definitely with cancellations in general, because I take a retainer to hold the date for people. And if people break up for a wedding, it's happened. I mean, I got like a really angry phone call from a father once where a couple broke up, and he was like, well, you didn't do any work, so you have to pay me back. And I was like, no, I like held the date for you and didn't book anybody else. That's what that's for. It's because it's like insuring me against that. And I think he threatened me, whatever, but at the end of the day, I had a contract, and that contract protected me. So one other thing that I'll say in my contract that I was just telling a friend that they need to put in, now this is like obviously very specific to my business. You kind of learn, I think I've learned things over the years, and again, I might not have to like get as specific. We go back and forth on this, but with the difference between editing a photograph and retouching a photograph, because editing is like color correction, getting it basically looking good. And retouching is like, hey, can you take like the boogers off my kid's face? Can you swap a head? Can you retouch my skin, make me look younger, whatever. So all these jokes I would always get at like weddings, like, oh, you just Photoshop that later. I was like, no, let's get this right, because you're going to pay extra for that. Yeah. So I put in my contract, like, I will do the editing, and you can just pay me per image. This is my rate for retouching, right off the bat. And then in my shop, they can purchase retouching. People, they happily do it. And it's prevented, like in the early days when I just added that into my contract, someone was like, can you make me look thinner in every single photo? And I was like, sure, here's my price. And she was like, oh, never mind. Like, I was like, you really don't need to do that anyway. But setting expectations both with the client communication and also in the contract. And I have them initial that like there is a difference and I can do it. And I think I'm really good at it, but that they'll pay an extra per image price.
Yeah. Oh gosh. So many good nuggets on what should be in a photographer's contract.
And it also adds value. So for example, in branding images, a lot of times I have to like reduce shine. If you're with the way you're lighting, like your skin might get shiny, whatever's looking. And that's just part of the package where they get so many retouched images. So that adds value too, that they're not just getting like the skill of design and shooting, but it's also that final retouching that like makes their skin not look shiny. And it doesn't look like crazy unnatural, that makes them look good.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes. Awesome. And one thing that I really am enjoying hearing from you, one that you do have a contract, yay. You went back and you revisited your contract, because everyone should do that every year, assess the pros and the cons that have happened throughout the year and how can we mitigate it through the contract. I love that. But you've also taken your contract and actually used it as an asset, as you used it as a tool of yours, rather than something that's just kind of part of the thing, but you're using it in a very strategic way where others, one, you're managing expectations, you're also allowing a better workflow and operations for yourself as well, and you're mitigating risks for them and for you. And I think that is just golden, such goldenness. I love it. Love it.
Yeah. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to make some mistakes along the way before but or we can learn from others and just make those changes.
And I think a lot of times, we get contracts and people sometimes feel very militant about a contract. Know that hopefully you have a clause that's called the waiver clause in your contract, which essentially allows you to waive other people's missteps without waiving future rights to come up and say, hey, you breached my contract. But it gives leverage, it gives grace in the contract also, and it allows you to be the human that you want to be and not some like crazy litigant. So
that's great. That's
okay.
great advice.
Yeah, it's good. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. You shared such great advice about the contract. Made me so happy.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me share all my things.
I love it. Well, you've shared some amazing books with us already. And normally I ask everybody, hey, so what's your favorite book? But is there any other like fictional book that you're just like, I love this book too?
Oh my gosh. I've been reading a lot of fiction, listening to a lot of fiction. I'm trying to think of anything off the top of my head. I don't know right now off the top of my head, but I will say I've been watching Ted Lasso and it's great. It's just so delightful.
Oh my gosh. Okay. If we're talking about Netflix, let me tell you, I have been, oh, you're talking about Apple TV. That's on Apple TV.
Yeah, it's Apple TV. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I haven't seen it yet. That's on our list to see. And I've heard it's amazing. And it's also won so many Emmys. So it's definitely
it's just a delight. It just makes me feel good.
So I have been watching this Korean drama on Netflix. Like
my husband just told me about this.
Okay, so I'm not watching that one, Squid Games.
Games that's the one he was.
Yeah, Squid Games is what's super popular right now. The number one show on Netflix ever.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And I'm like, wow. This is just not my jam. So I didn't watch it, although my husband totally did watch it.
Sounds creepy.
Like, anywho's, but I'm watching something that's totally on the opposite side of that spectrum called Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha or something like that.
Okay. I haven't even heard of this one.
Oh my gosh. So good. So good. And I like to watch it in the original language and then like read the subtitles because I don't like the whole dubbing aspect. But it is so good, lighthearted, quirky, romantic comedy.
Nice.
And it's just like a full like seasons, right? Like episodes. Love it. Absolutely been binge watching that and paying for it the next day. But it's so
okay, well, when my like season calms down and I have more time to just like get on the elliptical and watch stuff, I'm gonna do that.
Love that. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. How can people reach out to you? I know you talked about Instagram. What's your handle? What's your email? What's your website?
Yeah. Okay. So I have a couple different places. So Instagram, really the main one is Allie Siarto. It's ALLIESIARTO. I also have at Photo Field Notes, which is my podcast, the Photo Field Notes podcast for photographers. That's been on basically like a seasonal break for a little while I get through my craziness. But that is there. And then my websites are alliesiarto.com and photofieldnotes.com.
Love it. Everything's going to be in the show notes so that everyone can get access to it. Thank you so much for being with us today. I loved listening and learning from you today. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thank you so much for joining Law Chat with Girija. I just love these kind of conversations that are motivating, inspiring, but truthful, raw, and honest about all of the challenges, all of the victories, all of the triumphs, picking ourselves back up again. I just can't think of a better way to get mentorship but Law Chat with Girija. If this was helpful to you or this was inspiring to you, please share the love. You can give this video a thumbs up. You can subscribe to this channel. You can also share this with your community by taking a screenshot and posting it on your social media and tagging GBP Law. When you do that, a lot more people will be able to see this video that not only benefited you, but also can benefit them as well. So let's share that love and let's share that inspiration. And if you want more information about what I do and other resources, go check out gbplaw.com or yourcontractbuddy.com. And I look forward to seeing you next time.